If you've passed the age of 60, I'd like you to pause for just a moment and give some thought to the chamber where you rest. Not your living room, not the kitchen area. Strictly your sleeping quarters. This tranquil spot where your day begins and concludes is often seen by many of us as a secure, calm sanctuary, a place to unwind, to regenerate, and to reconnect with our true selves. However, what if I proposed that your sleeping chamber might be producing the exact opposite effect? You see, as the years advance, our physical forms undergo transformations, our slumber becomes less profound, our defense mechanisms grow more sensitive, and aspects we previously overlooked start to hold considerably more significance. In this presentation, I will guide you through 5 items, indeed merely 5, that might be concealed within your sleeping quarters right now. Items that could be depleting your vitality, triggering adverse reactions, impacting your respiration, and yes, even depriving you of sound, deep recuperative rest. Now, I realize this isn't always a comfortable realization. We all become accustomed to our established patterns. We tell ourselves, I've possessed that headrest for numerous years, or my slumber is entirely satisfactory, or my sleeping chamber appears tidy to my perception. But occasionally, the matter isn't about what we perceive visually. It's about what we sense experientially. Therefore, if you've been waking up fatigued, feeling mentally hazy throughout the day, or simply not quite feeling like yourself lately, I extend an invitation for you to continue with me, because by the conclusion of this presentation, you will not only comprehend what might be amiss, but you will also possess precise knowledge of the requisite actions. And the most advantageous aspect? The alterations are minor, but the impact they produce, it could potentially revolutionize how you feel on a daily basis. Let us commence. Regarding item number 5, aged headrests. Let us engage in a discussion about an object that contacts your countenance every single evening, your headrest. Now, before you articulate, "Oh, my headrest is perfectly adequate," I desire you to genuinely contemplate the matter. When was the most recent instance you acquired a replacement? If more than 24 months have elapsed, it is imperative that we engage in a serious discourse. You see, over the passage of time, our headrests subtly accumulate a multitude of elements we prefer not to have in proximity to our cranial region. Minuscule arachnids, microbial organisms, perspiration, epidermal oils, even fungal growth. And here lies the disquieting element. You might not even detect it visually, but your physical form senses it. Have you ever awakened experiencing nasal congestion, or sensing a slight blockage in your nasal passages? Perhaps your pharynx feels parched, or your optical organs are moistened first thing in the morning. That is not solely attributable to meteorological conditions or the progression of age. That could be your headrest initiating subtle adverse reactions while you are in a state of repose. These tiny arachnids flourish in warm, humid environments. They subsist upon the microscopic cutaneous cells we naturally shed each nocturnal period. And their biological byproducts, yes, their excretions, can precipitate sternutation, nasal obstruction, pruritus of the ocular organs. And that sensation as though your slumber was not as profound as it ought to have been. And the issue does not terminate there. If you have been discerning dermatological irritation, rubor, or even dermal eruptions, particularly in the vicinity of the malar regions or mandibular area, your headrest might be a contributing factor to the predicament. Envision this scenario. Evening after evening, you are pressing your countenance against the identical substrate that has absorbed sudor, sebaceous secretions, and bacterial entities. It accrues, and your integumentary system bears the repercussions. But what genuinely elicits my apprehension, particularly for individuals residing in regions characterized by elevated atmospheric moisture, is the potential for fungal proliferation within your headrest. Fungal propagules do not invariably manifest on the exterior, but if you are inhaling them for protracted durations each nocturnal period, they can contribute to lassitude, cognitive obfuscation, and even pulmonary complications over the long term. Presently, I am aware that certain headrests possess the familiarity of long-standing companions. We develop an affinity. They conform precisely to our preferred configuration. However, I implore you to trust me, irrespective of the perceived comfort. If it is inundated with irritants or worse, it is not judicious to compromise your somatic well-being. Thus, this is the recommended course of action. If your headrest exceeds a 24-month lifespan, it is prudent to secure a replacement. And upon doing so, contemplate selecting a low allergen headrest, one that exhibits resistance to tiny arachnids, fungal growth, and bacterial entities. They effectuate a significant amelioration, especially for epidermis exhibiting sensitivity or seasonal adverse reactions. And if you are not quite inclined to relinquish your current headrest, as a minimum measure, employ a protective covering for the headrest. Ensure it is cleansed weekly utilizing heated liquid. Personal cleanliness carries greater significance than we frequently apprehend, particularly with regard to the locus where we place our cranial region. This might be perceived as a minor modification, but do not underestimate its impact. Unimpeded respiration, more composed integument, enhanced repose. Everything initiates with a sanitized headrest. Your physical form merits that degree of solace. You have rightfully earned it. Moving on to item number 4. Congestion beneath the resting surface.
E-acknowledge.
The expanse beneath the resting surface appears to be the quintessential location to discreetly position articles. Out of visual range, consequently absent from conscious awareness, correct? Boxes containing antiquated apparel, festive adornments, even footwear we have not utilized for a span of years. It is effortless to simply relocate them underneath and dismiss them from consideration. However, this is the verifiable reality. What is lurking beneath your resting surface might be impeding your repose, your respiration, and even your cerebral tranquility to a greater extent than you apprehend. Let us commence with the fundamental elements. Particulate matter. When was the last occasion you genuinely cleansed the area beneath your resting surface? If you resemble the majority of individuals, a considerable duration has likely elapsed, and that is precisely the rationale underlying the predilection of tiny arachnids for that subterranean environment. They subsist upon the deceased cutaneous cells we naturally discard while we are in a state of repose, and their biological byproducts, once more, yes, their excretions, constitute a potent trigger for adverse reactions. That copious nasal discharge, the arid pharynx, the sternutation upon awakening, it may not signify a viral ailment. It could simply be the stagnant, dusty atmosphere ascending from the region beneath you while you are in a state of repose. However, the issue is not exclusively confined to particulate matter and adverse reactions. There is an additional phenomenon that transpires when we inundate that expanse with disorganization. We obstruct the movement of air currents. Your sleeping chamber, particularly during the nocturnal period, necessitates ventilation. Fresh air is required to circulate. But when the area beneath your resting surface is densely packed with receptacles for storage, receptacles, or simply miscellaneous items, you end up inhaling stale, malodorous air for the entirety of the nocturnal duration. Have you ever awakened feeling lethargic, even subsequent to a complete 8-hour period of repose? That dense atmosphere, confined and recirculated beneath you, could represent a substantial contributing factor. And here is a phenomenon you might not anticipate. Disorganization possesses a form of vitality. I do not express this in a metaphysical or preternatural context. I articulate it in a profoundly tangible psychological context. When a space is disorderly, even with your optical organs closed, your cognitive faculties do not attain complete relaxation. They persist in a state of vigilance. They sense that something remains incomplete, something is not in its designated location, and that has the capacity to disrupt your repose in manners you may never have envisioned. Certain experts in somnology and even practitioners of energy work posit that disorganization beneath your resting surface can engender agitation, muscular tension, and even vivid disquieting nocturnal visions. Your subconscious cognitive functions, they assert, are cognizant when the expanse beneath you is congested and tumultuous. So, what actions are feasible? Today, I wish to gently encourage you to inspect the area beneath your resting surface. Do not be apprehensive. A comprehensive purification is not mandatory to be executed concurrently. Merely commence by questioning yourself, is it genuinely necessary for me to retain these items in this location? Ideally, the expanse beneath your resting surface ought to be entirely unencumbered. However, if storage is indeed requisite, employ receptacles that are clean and securely sealed, ideally hermetically, and eschew textile materials, compressed paper products, or any substance that attracts particulate matter. Subsequently, administer a thorough aspiration of the area. Permit it to respire. Permit yourself to respire. Endeavor to experience a nocturnal period of repose in a chamber with absolutely nothing positioned beneath your resting surface. The disparity might astonish you. You may experience a sensation of diminished burden, enhanced revitalization, and even a slightly greater degree of serenity, because occasionally, superior repose is not contingent upon sophisticated sleeping surfaces or costly technological contrivances. Occasionally, it is as uncomplicated as affording your physical form and cognitive faculties the capacity to genuinely recuperate. You are deserving of that particular mode of repose every single evening. Regarding item number 3, aromatic luminaries and atmospheric deodorizers, allow me to surmise. You have likely been apprised that light-obstructing window coverings represent the optimal strategy for achieving sound repose, correct? They impede the entry of all illumination, maintain your chamber in a state of tranquility and comfort, and facilitate a more rapid onset of slumber. And yes, that assertion possesses partial validity. Obscurity is crucial for repose. However, there exists a complicating factor, particularly as we advance in years. You see, while total obscurity might assist you in achieving a state of slumber, it also has the potential to render the proper nocturnal awakening of your physical form more arduous. Here is the rationale. Your cerebral organ is reliant upon natural solar illumination to regulate your inherent biological clock. This is designated as your 24-hour physiological cycle. When the solar orb ascends and illumination permeates your chamber, your cerebral organ receives the message. It is the appointed time to awaken. It discontinues the production of a certain hormone, the endocrine secretion that induces somnolence, and commences the production of another neurotransmitter, the one that elevates your affective state and provides you with energetic capacity. But if you are reposing behind substantial, ponderous draperies that impede the entry of all that matutinal illumination, your physical form might not receive the communique. Consequently, even subsequent to an 8 or 9 hour interval of slumber, you might awaken experiencing lethargy, cognitive obfuscation, and a peculiar sense of weariness. Have you ever observed that you extend your period of slumber more frequently in a chamber characterized by profound obscurity? Or that it is more challenging to arise from your resting surface in the morning when your chamber feels dim and confined? That is not merely a figment of your imagination. That is your physical form missing its inherent signal for arousal. And the phenomenon does not cease there. Substantial draperies also impede the circulation of atmospheric currents. And if your chamber feels oppressive, humid, or simply uncongenial, they might constitute a contributing factor to the issue. In the absence of unimpeded atmospheric circulation throughout the expanse, particulate matter and moisture accumulate. That has the potential to lead to issues with respiration, inferior quality of repose, and even a depressed affective state over the passage of time. And here is a consideration that is frequently overlooked. Illumination exerts an influence upon our emotional states. Natural solar illumination is one of the most effective natural agents for alleviating depressive symptoms available. It facilitates your cerebral organ in feeling vigilant, sanguine, and harmonized. However, if your sleeping chamber persists in a state of obscurity throughout the diurnal period, your physical form may remain in a diminished energy state, and your affective state can suffer. So, what is the proposed remedy? You are not required to entirely relinquish privacy or obscurity. You simply necessitate a more advantageous equilibrium. Substitute those ponderous light-obstructing draperies with coverings that filter illumination. They still impede harsh illumination during the nocturnal period, but they permit the entry of that gentle early matutinal solar illumination that communicates to your physical form that it is time to ascend. Or, if you are not inclined to undertake that modification, simply draw open your draperies as the initial action in the morning. Permit the solar orb to enter. Permit the fresh atmosphere to circulate. Stand adjacent to the fenestration for an interval of 1 or 2 minutes. Merely a minimal amount of illumination impacting your ocular organs can assist your cerebral organ in re-establishing its function for the diurnal period. Attempt this for a few consecutive mornings. You may experience astonishment at the degree of enhanced wakefulness, revitalization, and mental clarity you perceive without altering any other variables, because superior repose is not exclusively contingent upon the degree of obscurity within the chamber. It pertains to the manner in which your physical form responds to illumination, atmospheric currents, and spatial dimensions. And bear this in mind. Awakening with energetic capacity and purposeful intent is not a characteristic we outgrow. It is a state we evolve into. Regarding item number 1, electronic apparatus, particularly your portable telecommunications device. Allow me to pose a query, and I implore you to respond with sincerity. Is your portable telecommunications device the final object upon which your gaze rests prior to seeking repose? And the initial object you inspect upon arising in the morning? If such is the case, you are not an anomaly. These diminutive apparatus have become integral components of our established patterns, elements of how we unwind, how we maintain connectivity, how we feel engaged with the global milieu. However, they have also emerged as one of the primary rationales underlying the struggles experienced by a multitude of individuals, particularly senior adults, with repose characterized by inferiority, superficiality, and restlessness. Allow me to elucidate. Your cerebral organ functions based on cues related to illumination. When the solar orb descends and the chamber becomes more obscure, your cerebral organ commences the production of a certain hormone. That is the endocrine secretion that induces somnolence. It represents nature's methodology for preparing you for a state of repose. But when your gaze is fixed upon the display screen of your portable telecommunications device during the nocturnal period, whether you are navigating digital news feeds, viewing visual presentations, or merely reviewing electronic correspondence, the azure luminescence emanating from that display screen transmits the inverse message to your cerebral organ. It communicates, it is still the diurnal period. Maintain a state of wakefulness. Consequently, even if you experience fatigue, your cerebral organ is deceived into sustaining a state of vigilance. You recline upon your resting surface, tossing and turning, contemplating the reason behind your inability to gradually disengage. That is not indicative of a sleep disorder. That is your portable telecommunications device disrupting your cycle of repose. And the impact does not cease there. Even subsequent to your achieving a state of slumber, your portable telecommunications device continues to exert a detrimental influence. That faint vibration from a late-night textual message, the luminosity emanating from a notification, that established practice of inspecting the time in the midst of the nocturnal period. Every minute disruption extracts your cerebral organ from the phase of profound repose. The category of repose your physical form necessitates for restoration, regeneration, and genuine revitalization. Consequently, you awaken experiencing fatigue. You attribute it to the advancement of age, or psychological pressure, or unpleasant nocturnal visions. But in actuality, your physical form may never have attained the mode of uninterrupted recuperative repose, for which it is signaling distress. Presently, I comprehend the line of reasoning you are likely pursuing, but I utilize my portable telecommunications device as my mechanism for matutinal arousal, or I find it agreeable to listen to soothing auditory content prior to seeking repose. That is permissible. You are not compelled to relinquish everything. However, it is indeed requisite to establish physical separation between yourself and your display screen when the appointed time for repose arrives. This is my recommendation. Position your portable telecommunications device for replenishment in an alternative chamber, not upon your adjacent nocturnal furniture, not beneath your headrest, not within arm's reach, sufficiently distanced such that it is beyond visual range, and consequently absent from conscious awareness. If your reliance upon it is for the purpose of matutinal arousal, acquire a simple, conventionally designed horological device for alarming purposes. One devoid of notifications, lacking a luminous display screen, merely a gentle auditory output to facilitate your awakening. And if it is absolutely essential to retain your portable telecommunications device in proximity, at a minimum activate its mode for aerial transport, orient its display screen downwards, and position it across the chamber, where the inclination to inspect it in the midst of the nocturnal period will be mitigated. More advantageously, institute a calming ritualistic practice prior to seeking repose that completely eschews all display screens. Perhaps you peruse a limited number of pages from a bound volume, or you quietly engage in contemplation and introspection regarding your diurnal experiences, or you execute physical elongation exercises, or you listen to subdued auditory content emanating from a discrete audio emission device. Permit your cerebral organ to gradually disengage in a natural manner, unimpeded by that synthetic illumination. Endeavor this for merely a single septenary period. No portable telecommunications device within the confines of your resting surface. No interval of engagement with display screens for a minimum of 30 minutes preceding the commencement of repose. I provide assurance. You might experience astonishment at the degree of enhanced profundity, tranquility, and revitalization your repose becomes. Because genuine revitalization, the category that reinstates your energetic capacity, sharpens your intellectual faculties, and elevates your affective state, can only be achieved when your cerebral organ is permitted to entirely cease its active function. And during this phase of existence, more than ever, you are deserving of that particular mode of repose. Your sleeping chamber, your somatic well-being, and the subtle potency of incremental modifications. Let us momentarily suspend our discourse at this juncture, not with the intent of expediting towards the conclusion, not to recapitulate the knowledge we have assimilated, but simply to engage in reflective contemplation, because the subject matter of our discussion is not truly confined to headrests, portable telecommunications devices, or draperies. It pertains to an element of considerably greater profundity. It pertains to the manner in which your surrounding environment shapes the trajectory of your existence, particularly at this precise juncture at this stage of your life. You see, your sleeping chamber transcends the mere confines of 4 structural barriers and a resting surface. It constitutes a manifestation of the manner in which you prioritize your own well-being. It is the locus where your physical form retreats for processes of recuperation, where your cognitive processes achieve quiescence, where your spiritual essence discovers moments of silence. And yet, for a considerable number of us, it also represents an area we tend to disregard. We diligently cleanse the culinary area. We express concern regarding the external grounds. We arrange the vehicular storage structure. But the sleeping chamber? We retain the identical headrest for numerous years. We accumulate receptacles beneath the resting surface. We succumb to slumber accompanied by the illumination emanating from a portable telecommunications device display screen, assuring ourselves that it is satisfactory, and for a duration it is indeed, until the subtle indicators commence their whispering. Perhaps you are awakening experiencing a greater degree of fatigue than when you initially sought repose. Perhaps your articular structures ache in the morning. Perhaps your cognitive processes feel indistinct, as though the boundaries are not as sharply defined as they once were. And it is effortless, profoundly effortless, to dismiss it as a consequence. I am simply undergoing the process of senescence. We articulate. But what if the process of senescence is not the underlying issue? What if a component of the issue resides within the space in which we are undergoing the process of senescence? I implore you to assimilate this message. Occasionally, the resolution is not predicated upon augmenting the volume of actions undertaken. It is contingent upon undertaking actions in an alternative manner. Occasionally, a healthier mode of existence initiates not with a novel prescribed remedy, but with a headrest exhibiting enhanced cleanliness. Not with a novel dietary adjunct, but with atmospheric currents exhibiting freshness and illumination emanating from the matutinal solar orb. Not with a surrender to circumstances, but with a process of eliminating elements that no longer serve your purposes. The verifiable reality is that as we advance in age, our physical forms do not recuperate with the same facility as they once did. We are more susceptible to deleterious substances, to atmospheric currents of inferior quality, to repose that is punctuated by interruptions. Our neurological system necessitates tranquility. Our pulmonary organs necessitate atmosphere devoid of impurities. Our cerebral processes necessitate genuine revitalization. Consequently, those seemingly inconsequential elements, they are no longer inconsequential. They constitute the foundational basis of our experiential state, on a continuous daily cycle. And I convey this with benevolent intent and profound respect. You are deserving of an existence superior to nocturnal periods characterized by restlessness and matutinal periods characterized by weariness. You are deserving of a sleeping chamber that actively supports your state of well-being. You are deserving of repose that is perceived as actual repose. You are deserving of a resting surface that But above all, you are deserving of the capacity to exercise dominion over your somatic well-being. Because we inhabit a global environment that instructs senior adults to passively acquiesce to a trajectory of decline, to assume a posture of inactivity, to adapt to prevailing conditions. However, within the parameters of this communicative medium, we unequivocally repudiate that conceptualization. You are not present here to inconspicuously diminish. You are present here to engage in life with perspicacity, with fortitude, with deliberate intent. And that frequently commences with the initial environment to which you return each nocturnal period, your sleeping chamber. Therefore, internalize this message profoundly, not in the guise of a didactic presentation, but as a solicitation to reassert your inherent authoritative capacity, to survey your chamber and pose the query, is this expanse affording me support or gradually eroding my vitality? And if the response is not consonant with your aspirations, undertake corrective actions, not all-encompassingly, not accompanied by pressure or culpability, but in a sequential manner. Replace the headrest, unveil the draperies, disconnect the portable telecommunications device, facilitate the circulation of atmospheric currents, permit the illumination to permeate, permit the physical form to recuperate, and observe the manner in which something of such limited scale, something as elementary as a more advantageous nocturnal period of repose, can propagate outwards into every other facet of your existence. You will possess augmented energetic capacity to relish your matutinal periods, enhanced mental acuity to engage in perusal, intellectual deliberation, and interpersonal communication, increased forbearance towards individuals for whom you harbor affection, amplified somatic strength to engage in physical activity, savor your alimentary intake, and confront the diurnal challenges, and heighten nocturnal tranquility cognizant that your sleeping chamber, your designated expanse, is at long last operating in your favor rather than in opposition to you. That constitutes the subtle potency of incremental modifications. That is what you are rightfully deserving of, and that is what I am here to assist you in reclaiming. One act of respiration, one volitional selection, one nocturnal period at a time. Presently, prior to our concluding interactions, I merely desire to reiterate a consideration of significance. Prioritizing your somatic well-being does not invariably entail substantial alterations, significant exertion, or considerable financial expenditure. Occasionally, it initiates precisely within the confines of your domestic environment, with limited, judicious selections within the expanse where you attain repose. Therefore, inquire of yourself, what element can I relinquish today that no longer contributes to my state of well-being? What uncomplicated modification could facilitate my respiration with greater ease, my attainment of more profound repose, and my awakening experiencing a slightly enhanced sense of self? You are not obligated to accomplish everything concurrently. Merely commence at some point. Perhaps it involves substituting that antiquated headrest, or finally addressing the disorganization beneath your resting surface, or electing to position your portable telecommunications device in the alternative chamber this nocturnal period. These are not merely obligatory tasks. They represent manifestations of self-reverence, and subsequent to the multitude of years you have dedicated to caring for others, the opportune moment has arrived to prioritize your own care. Gratitude for dedicating this interval with me.